Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming into today's webinar as part of Alaska Startup Week. As our attendees come in, remind everybody that you can use the Q&A capability that is available in the webinars through Zoom to be able to ask any questions of our presenters today. And I'll make sure as we go through that any questions are brought forward to both Tommy and Kathy. So today we're on day 4 of Alaska Startup Week here in the state of Alaska. We have 2 excellent presenters today, Tommy Sheridan and Kathy Renfeld. I'll pass over to Tommy to lead the discussion. And then for those coming in, don't forget, use the Q&A for any questions you have as we go forward. So I'll mute myself and pass it over to Tommy. So over to you, Tommy.
Great, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Kathy, can you just let me know, did the land acknowledgement slide come up for you all?
Yep.
Okay, great. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. Kathy and I are here in Cordova, Alaska, and so I'd like to start this panel discussion off with an acknowledgement of where we are and what that means. So Cordova is located on the ancestral lands of the Eyak people. The native village of Eyak is an Alaska Native village, mostly comprised of 4 distinct Alaska Native peoples. They are the Eyak, Chugach region people, Tlingit, and Athabaskan, who are organized together as a federally recognized tribe. And we just acknowledge and are very grateful for the stewardship that they have shown for millennia here. I'll briefly introduce our panelists, myself included, and certainly they are welcome to elaborate when they give their presentations. Kathy Renfeld is joining us from the Cordova Chamber of Commerce. Kathy is the executive director for the chamber and has been for over 6 years. Before that, she was the marketing and PR director for Cordova's telephone cooperative for over 5 years. She's very active local public servant, has been a firefighter and a medic for the Cordova Volunteer Fire Department for over 10 years, and is involved here in the arts, statewide advocacy for the Alaska Marine Highway System, statewide advocacy at the Alaska Tourism organization. Kathy has a bachelor's degree in recreation management and public relations, and both Kathy and I are very interested in developing a Blue Economy Committee through the Cordova Chamber of Commerce. My name is Tommy Sheridan. As of next Monday, I will be the Associate Director for the University of Alaska Fairbanks Alaska Blue Economy Center. I have been in Alaska for a little over 20 years, mainly involved with fisheries. I have experience in various leadership capacities within nonprofit sectors, as a fisheries manager for Alaska Department of Fish and Game, various roles for a seafood processing company, and more recently, teaching and research and administrative roles within a variety of university entities, more recently University of Alaska Fairbanks. I have a bachelor's degree in environmental studies from Florida State University, a master's of science in fisheries and wildlife administration from Oregon State University. I'm very involved in public service, both locally here in Cordova, on statewide entities, and I'm very grateful and honored to be one of 2 U.S. commissioners on an international organization known as the North Pacific Anonymous Fish Commission, which, given its relevance to salmon hatchery production throughout the North Pacific, is very relevant to Cordova. Peter Webley is the program manager for Center ICE. He's also the associate director of research for the Alaska Center for Unmanned Aircraft Systems Integration. Peter has a bachelor's and a master's degree and a PhD in geophysical and atmospheric sciences and remote sensing. And Peter also is a very active public servant, serving as a board member and secretary for the Arctic Research Consortium of the United States. And so with that, we'll go ahead and transition to our presentations. I'm going to stop sharing so Kathy can share her own screen. There you go, Kathy.
All right, did that work?
It did.
Great. Well, hello and welcome from Cordova, Alaska. This background behind me is one of many beautiful scenic intact ecosystems that we have here in Cordova. As Tommy said, I am Kathy Renfelt. I'm the Executive Director of the Cordova Chamber of Commerce. We are a nonprofit organization that partners with the City of Cordova, the Prince William Sound Economic Development District, Native Village of Eac, and many other entities to put on programs that support quality of life enhancement, economic development, business support, and destination management and marketing. So in many communities, each one of those areas has its own nonprofit entity that focuses in that area. In our community, we are one organization that does it all. And not that we do everything in all those areas, but we work in all those spaces. We are a small organization, just 2 full-time and 1 part-time staff. And we are grateful to be doing this work. And I'm going to share with you some of the recent work that we've done developing a new regenerative tourism strategy for the community of Cordova. So I'll be sharing some information about Cordova's current industry and economy, and which kind of explains why this work is needed, as well as an explanation of this new model of tourism and how we're implementing it here in Cordova. And there's also ways that this can benefit the environment, the quality of life, and the environment here in Cordova for many years to come. First, let's look at the current economy. So 50% of Cordova's households have someone working directly in fish harvesting, and seafood processing represents another large portion. Another example of related employment is the Prince William Sound Aquaculture Corporation, headquartered in Cordova, which runs 5 salmon hatcheries and employs 50 full-time staff and 75 to 100 seasonal workers. That's just one of many entities like this. So clearly you can see that fishing is not only a relevant part of our culture, but also very important to our economy. Looking at this chart, you can probably see many other industries that support or are reliant on commercial fishing: repair, fuel and equipment sellers, net and boat vendors, and freight haulers, to name a few. You can see here that government is also a significant part of Cordova's employment, including city, state, federal, and Coast Guard, as well as school district and hospital workers. Retail and leisure, hospitality, professional, and nonprofit employment play a smaller but important role in Cordova's economy, beneficiaries of its growing visitor industry. But revenues from fishing can be quite unpredictable. These slides, the last one and the next few, by the way, are from Neil Freed. He's a state economist for the state of Alaska, and I believe he's working through UAF, if I'm not mistaken. You can see that this leads to a wildly seasonal economy that expands beyond those working directly in the fishing industry and impacts the whole community. The first chart on the left is fish harvesting employment, and you can see how it's almost identical to the overall employment in Cordova. So when it's a good year for fishing, we all feel it, and when it's a bad year, we all feel that as well. As the most seafood dependent community in the state of Alaska, you could see that we could probably benefit from some economic diversification. So one thing that we're looking at is regenerative tourism. Regenerative tourism is a brand new model that centers around the idea that there's actually an opportunity for visitors to leave a destination better than they found it. Rooted in Indigenous values, it addresses impacts holistically from destination and community perspectives, as well as environmental. It seeks to work together with and build up the local ecosystem and cultures, as well as the current industries and businesses, through tour offerings that promote cultural revitalization, environmental restoration, hyperlocal spending, and grow regenerative industries. We're working with a Hawaii-based nonprofit, which has established itself as an industry leader in this space, with the aim of offering an impact studio. It's kind of like a business incubator that's focused on social good. We're doing this in 2023 to support the development of new regenerative tourism offerings here for to be put on by local businesses. This could have huge impacts to increase cultural, economic, and ecological resiliency. And I'll get more into that later. But managing for regenerative tourism in a destination is a complex activity. A destination strategy is a vision and a roadmap that tells the community where they want to go and how they're going to get there. A strategy may contain guidance for community management, development, and marketing activities, as well as stewardship. For a recent comprehensive plan, the City of Cordova gathered broad-based stakeholder input on what the community needs and wants, and many of these can be addressed and supported by our regenerative tourism work. Cordova Chamber, then, we had a recent opportunity to manifest a transformational destination strategy for Cordova with support of federal COVID relief funding. We worked with stakeholders from all parts of the community to create a 15-year vision of what success would look like if we had a robust tourism sector in Cordova that complemented our current industry and built up our local businesses, strengthened our local culture, and protected ecosystems around us. Through this process, along with a 15-year vision and strategic priorities to reach it, we also named and identified the core community values that are most important for Cordova to celebrate and protect as we grow our economy. A new destination, and so you'll see those are listed here, and these are specific to our community and what our stakeholders believe. A new destination leadership team was formed to carry out the strategy for Cordova, and this engaged committee of stakeholders from local businesses and organizations has been charged with building and working toward a specific vision, the vision that I spoke of, that maintains our core community values while advancing healthy economic diversification in a way that supports both local residents and visitors. And that's a key element, is that unlike a tourism plan, a destination strategy is really focused on the impacts to the local people and the place itself. And sure, we're interested in how that impacts visitors as well, but it's not only focused on the visitor. Another part of our strategy was hyper-targeted tourism marketing. We decided that for us, quality is more important than quantity. A modest number of independent traveler visitors can have a more impact than a large volume of mass tourists, especially once environmental and cultural impacts are factored in. In order to accomplish this, the outreach must be targeted at just the right individuals and groups. This also helps to best utilize limited tourism marketing dollars for a community like we have. So you can think of it as going from something like this, where we have this message and we're just screaming it from a billboard, hoping that someone will hear it, to this, where we've located an individual with a proven interest in Cordova and are able to message directly to them, giving them that little nudge they need to choose Cordova. In this plan, we identified a target market within this sect of travelers whose interests align with our community identity and offerings. Adventure travelers might be smaller in number than those visiting Alaska via mass tourism markets like large group and cruise tours. They are really looking for a distinct experience in nature, some part of that which offers physical activity usually, and they really want to be immersed in the culture of the place. This definition is more capturing an outlook on life, more so than a certain demographic. It could be everything from the baby boomer that's looking for a grown-up version of visiting Alaska to millennials that are still in the vanguard of adventure travel. So what's that itch that adventure travelers have? What are their motivations for travel? Yes, they are interested in things like unique experiences and finding connection through nature and culture and discovery. They're also looking for fun and thrills and escaping to enhance their mental health, but they are even more motivated by destinations that offer them opportunities for personal growth and learning, an expanded worldview, and ultimately a trip that will leave them transformed, a better version of themselves. That's pretty specific. So you might wonder, is there really, a market here? And the experts say yes. According to Allied Market Research, the global adventure tourism market generated $112.22 billion in 2020 and is estimated to generate I don't even know how to say this, 1 trillion, what's more than a billion, a trillion, over $1 trillion by 2028. So 54% of people ages 35 to 44, they take vacation for adventure, according to Solo Traveler World, and 96% of people who are 25 to 34 are likely to travel independently, and millennials are actually 13% more likely to travel to a destination with cultural or historical significance, according to Responsible Travel. And this is interesting, 20% of all travelers are millennials, and they take an average of 7.4 trips per year, according to Project Time Off. So what we have done is we have tried to target directly at them, and we, along with our local businesses, we're trying to provide them with the tools to reinforce the message through each of our channels so that we are all communicating with one voice. We're providing information and resources that independent travelers need to plan a trip that they can then share with like-minded travelers. And the Cordova Chamber of Commerce, we are a destination marketing organization, but we're also a business support organization. We're a business membership organization. So we thought it was really important to bring the businesses into this project with us as equal partners. So we are not gatekeeping any of this information. All of this we're sharing with all of our local businesses. We created a business destination toolkit that's filled with free resources for businesses to take this successful tourism campaign. So I mentioned that we did do a targeted tourism marketing campaign, and that reached 13.3 million impressions, and it increased the traffic to our destination marketing website by 900%. So according to all the benchmarks from the agency that we worked with, that again was funded with that COVID grant funds, that is way above benchmark. So it was by every metric, a very wildly successful campaign. So clearly there is a desire to learn more about destinations like ours. There's people interested in hearing about it, and they have a desire to learn more. So we have this successful campaign, and we are now sharing that with the local businesses through this toolkit. We have a media suite there. We have an outreach strategy kit, which has a lot of that demographic and targeting information that I showed you guys with some more detail, and some kind of clearly laid avenues for how to reach these people. And then we also have a digital guide, which you saw on one of the previous slides that was scrolling down the screen. The neat thing about that is that, yes, it can be used for visitors, but it also can be used as a recruitment tool for businesses that are trying to recruit people to move to Cordova to work for their business. And then we also have interactive QR codes that we printed and laminated and shared with all the local businesses to put up on their door, so that when visitors are here, that they can access that information really easily from anywhere they are. So regenerative tourism can look many different ways in practice. We are focusing on how regenerative tourism can be put into action by businesses, how regenerative tourism can be put into action by visitors, and then also how it can be put into action by leadership. And leadership could mean entities like us, the chamber. It could mean by the city of Cordova, by the local tribal authority, by the state. So you can see that there's many ways to put it into practice, but some examples of what it looks like in real life could be commercial fishing boats that when they're on the edges of their season in the spring and fall, they become charter sightseeing boats that are doing. And so we do have some of that starting to happen. We have commercial fishermen who are offering sightseeing charters, bird watching charters with their boats. And so they're using that infrastructure, that knowledge that they have already, and just kind of leveraging that to also provide capacity for this. It could be something as simple as phasing out plastic products for your guests. It could be making sure that all of the cultural references to Indigenous peoples are accurate in your presentations and your sharing with guests, and that they're present and they're accurate, and maybe even just doing a little research as a tour provider or a local business to find out what was on this land, 1,000 years ago. what was on this land 500 years ago, what was in this place back then, and then that brings to light some relevant cultural education that you can then share with your guests. It also could be something like donating to a fundraiser or hosting a fundraiser for a local community group through whatever platform you're hosting for visitors. We do this with some of our festivals that we do. For example, our Shorebird Festival has a pie social baked into it, pun intended, to allow fundraising for the local pioneers. It also has a birders breakfast that supports one of the local churches, and a dinner that supports a local music camp that are just part of the festival activities. And the neat thing about that is that the visitors that come here for the festival, yes, they care about the birds and they care about seeing the intact ecosystems here, but they also are getting a really kind of unique experience with our local culture. And that we have found really kind of elevates the whole experience for the guests. And then it also obviously benefits those local businesses and community groups as well. And it also could look something like doing, if you're going to do a hike or a yoga session on the beach, maybe also do a little beach cleanup while you're there, or pull some invasive weeds that you know are there, or maybe work in some citizen science into what you're doing if you're going on a hike. And before you go on the hike, introduce people to the iNaturalist or eBird app and encourage them to use it while they're hiking, or when they go out. So yeah, there's lots of ways that it can look. Somebody asked me right before I came in today to the office. I was talking about regenerative tourism to somebody in our local espresso stand / convenience store / liquor store here in Cordova. Tommy knows what I'm talking about. And yeah, standing in line for my dirty chai. They asked how things were going at the chamber, and I told them about regenerative tourism. And as I went up to pay, the shop owner said, "So this, what you're talking about, does that mean like you're trying to bring in a lot more tourists?" And I said, "Actually, no." There's 3 goals with this, and that is to increase quality of life for residents, to have a positive impact on the local ecosystem and culture, and then to bring healthy economic impact to local businesses. And so it's really, like I said, it's all about quality over quantity. Those independent travelers have much higher economic impact. In fact, it's six times higher is what the statistic is that independent travelers have over mass tourism visitors. You know, the expedition cruise ships that we've been getting into Cordova the last year or two, they are smaller and they're really impact minded. So that works well. And Tommy's going to talk more about that. And the nice thing also there is that those people that come in to you know, explore different parts of the state via those expedition cruise ships are, I think, at least 20% of them say that they come back as independent travelers to those destinations that they discovered on those tours. So there's certainly benefits to that. And just in general, there are lots of benefits. Got a couple more slides here and then I'll be wrapping up. Just wanted to share with you some of the ways that regenerative tourism can support the economy. Hyper-local spending is a really big part of this. You know, you're really trying to offer as many opportunities as possible for these visitors to make sure that the money that they're infusing into the economy is going directly to local residents and not to large corporations or companies that are headquartered outside of the community. And then also the local food systems. Tommy's going to probably talk a little bit more about that, making sure that the food that's harvested is circulated around the economy more, and that can be brought to pass by visitors infusing that funding into it. You know, it's the resources that we harvest here in Cordova are really high quality wild stocks of salmon and other seafood, and so they go for a high price elsewhere. And so to make that affordable for locals here to be purchased at restaurants and stuff, it's better to have that higher volume going through by having more people that are purchasing it that are visitors and that have that capital to spend it. There's also going to be obviously good impacts theoretically to the environment. So these travelers that are interested in this, by the way, I was talking earlier about how this next generation of travelers is much more sustainability minded and much more conscious of their impact. So really what we're doing here also is future-proofing Cordova as our visitor industry here. We are planning for tomorrow's visitor. And so they put a high value on conservation, on impact, on having kind of authentic experiences that are able to have a positive impact on the community, and they're hoping to kind of offset the carbon imprint that they have made by doing that travel. So they can feel okay about taking that flight to Cordova because they know once they get here, they're going to be giving back and supporting entities and programs and offerings that are doing environmental and cultural revitalization. And also, the cultural side, there's lots of opportunities to do cultural revitalization through this. One of the best benefits, I think, is, like I said, regenerative tourism is rooted in Indigenous values. And we are looking to partner really closely with our local tribe on this work so that we can increase the knowledge and the understanding, not only of visitors, but of locals. To really make sure that there is proper and accurate representation there. And there's also opportunities to provide offerings that are going to be fun for the local tribal members and local residents to participate in. We just held a sobriety celebration here in Cordova last week, and they did a drum making class. And that is a great example. That's something that was offered to the Hurtigruten group as well. And so hopefully having more travelers coming in that are interested in those kind of activities means that those activities are going to be available more often for locals and their visiting friends and relatives to enjoy and to learn and to grow understanding locally. So in closing, I'd just like to thank you for your time. And I wanted to give my information in case anybody did want to reach out to me with any questions directly. I know we're going to do a Q&A at the end here as well. And I wanted to invite you all to follow along on what we're doing here at the Cordova Chamber of Commerce. CordovaChamber.com is their website, and our social channels are at Cordova Chamber. This weekend, we're doing a business empowerment summit. And at this, I'll also be talking about regenerative tourism there, as well as we'll have somebody talking about business resiliency, and there'll be some hands-on actionable resources for businesses. And this is happening this weekend in November and also in April. We're planning to do it twice a year. And if you're interested in learning more about how to participate in that, you can contact me or reach out through our channels to get more information about that. Likewise, if you're interested in learning more about the Blue Economy project that Tommy and I are hoping to be working on, you can reach out to us about that as well. And with that, I'll give it over to Tommy.
Great, thank you, Kathy. All righty, I'll go ahead and share my screen. All righty, Kathy, do you see that? Okay, great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Tommy Sheridan, and so in full disclosure, I'll say that I'm also on the Cordova Chamber of Commerce's board, and just very proud to be a part of Kathy's work there, and we're very grateful for the support that we receive from the city every year. So just wanted to put in some plugs there. Here I'm speaking on behalf of Alaska Blue Economy Center. So I will be joining ABEC next week. I've been engaged with ABEC for the past year, and I'll just describe a little bit about that here today. ABEC was founded in 2019, and its goal is to serve as a resource and support center for research, instruction, and outreach of relevance to the state's vast marine and aquatic resources, both at the coast and inland as well. The center looks to support entrepreneurialism and economic diversification throughout Alaska, but especially in coastal communities like Cordova, and to facilitate internal communication between UAF partner units and externally with all of the many partners, some of which we'll refer to here today. The founding units of ABEC include the College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences, the Alaska Center for Energy and Power, the College of Business and Security Management, and then Peter's entity that is hosting this here today, the Alaska Center for Innovation, Commercialization, and Entrepreneurship, or Center ICE. The Alaska Blue Economy Center's mission is to combine UAF's extensive interdisciplinary research, instruction, and public engagement related to Alaska's offshore and inland aquatic resources and ecosystems to serve as a resource to the state and stimulate new external funding in fisheries, mariculture, energy, marine observing, technology and training, and coastal tourism. And here I provide a hyperlink to ABEC's website. I provide a couple slides here with great graphics that I found on the website listed below. And so a lot of people ask, what is the blue economy? And my answer is, it's everything that we do here in Cordova. Cordova is the blue economy. And so today we'll talk a little bit about tourism, but some activities that are really prevalent here in Cordova include aquaculture and fisheries. Our energy cooperative is highly innovative and really globally renowned in the work that they're doing with the support of Alaska Center for Energy and Power. And then maritime transport is a very real industry in coastal Alaska, especially when you take into consideration the volumes of seafood that are being transported via that system. The same publication went ahead and looked at the missions and the goals for a variety of incubators, accelerators, and clusters that were in operation throughout North America in 2018. Certainly, fisheries and aquaculture are big throughout the country. And certainly that's a big activity here as well. But I would like to combine those two, marine tourism and tourism words, to really have greater prominence here. And I think that's a real opportunity for Cordova and many coastal Alaskan communities throughout Alaska. I'll spend a little bit of time here talking about some of our activities and accomplishments at Alaska Blue Economy Center this past year. We were very involved with an application through EDA's Build Back Better Regional Challenge program, and Alaska was one of 21 awardees. The Alaska Mariculture Cluster was given $49 million and then some to support mariculture research and development in the state. ABEC was very involved with that effort from the get-go, and I'm looking forward to being a part of that through my role with the center. A very interesting and beneficial part of our work there was to support and encourage the city of Valdez's interest to contribute to this grant application. And so they showed incredible leadership to offer up a $6 million matching resource to the grant application, which ultimately freed up $30 million to the benefit of the entirety of the state, including stakeholders in Cordova. We've also been very involved with the establishment of a community innovation hub here in Cordova, following a successful implementation in Kotzebue. And then something that Kathy and we worked on this past summer was the Alaska Chamber of Commerce had one of their community site visits here in Cordova, and we hosted a really successful Blue Economy panel, and that was in June. And then finally, I'll spend a little bit of time talking about engagement with a company who visited Cordova and that I engaged with beyond, named Hurtigruten, with thanks to Kathy and the Chamber for their leadership in making that possible. So here we had, it was big news in Cordova to have cruise ships returning to Cordova. There was certainly local fanfare in the local newspaper and to the right on Cordova Chamber's website. And these were some materials that I put together for our engagement with Hurtigruten when they came to Cordova, which included really engaging with Hurtigruten staff and guests at a local place of historical significance, engaging local seafood producers with said individuals, and it was enough to encourage Hurtigruten to extend our relationship further into the summer. So you can see in the background in the harbor, one of Hurtigruten's lightering vessels, tendering vessels, bringing guests to shore. And here was my recruiting team. So we grabbed a few kids that were involved in our event and brought them down to the harbor and passed out flyers, just letting them know where we were and what we were up to. And this is where we were. This is one of the oldest structures in Cordova. It's recently been renovated, and it's just a treasure trove of local history. The Pioneer Igloo number 19. So as a part of our event here for the May 30th visit of Hurtigruten's ship to Cordova, we were able to partner with a local oyster farmer and a local seafood producer and processor to provide oysters, fish. I made kelp pickle soup with bratwurst, which was a big hit with the German visitors, and really just put together some materials highlighting the history of fisheries in Prince William Sound. Hurtigruten visited Cordova twice this past summer, and we'll have several more visits next year. We're looking forward to that. The experience was so successful that I was asked to join Hurtigruten on their August cruise, which began in Vancouver and ended in Nome. And so it was a 16-day cruise. The scheduled itinerary is shown on the right with a website for similar activities. We didn't have a single case of COVID on board, but Alaskan communities are still struggling with how to kind of get back up on step. And so there were some deviations to our schedule out of concern in the local communities for COVID mitigation. As a part of my role, I gave several lectures on board, just reflective of my experience in fisheries and aquaculture. And then here, I just really want to highlight Kathy's reference to the role that citizen science can play in regenerative tourism. And I'll say that Hurtigruten is an incredibly innovative company that really, really embraces regenerative tourism, whether it's their hybrid vessel that runs on battery power, or the lengths that they go to connect their guests with citizen science activities, including skipper science, eBird observations, and marine mammal observations through Happy Whale. I think that my experience with Hurtigruten last August can help us here in Cordova to understand and develop programs of relevance to their guests, and I'm very hopeful that we could consider doing something similar in 2023. Here, I'll take a little bit of time just to go through a slideshow that I haven't had the opportunity to really share with anyone, and so I'm grateful for this here. On the upper left is a picture of the vessel, the Roald Amundsen, again a hybrid vessel that visited Cordova. The lower right is my room in the ship, and I was very surprised and happy to have internet access for the majority of our travel throughout Alaska. It allowed me to maintain connection with my family and with my clients elsewhere. The first day that we were in Vancouver, BC, there was an extraordinary woman who joined us, Sunniva Sorby, and she provided this definition of citizen science, and I was given permission by her to share it. It really just resonated with me, and her definition is that citizen science exemplifies the power of community to affect change and power the cutting edge of science. Citizen scientists are ordinary people who apply their own knowledge and expertise to work in tandem with professional scientists, bringing diverse perspectives and ground truth data to some of the world's most difficult problems. And this is so very much a part of what many of us do here in Cordova. I think Cordova just exemplifies citizen science in many ways. So the great part about traveling throughout coastal Alaska is for me, being able to reconnect with friends in a few of the communities that we visited. Here, we have Julie and Gig Decker, who are spearheading a memorial in Wrangell. And so Wrangell was the first community that we visited. We're able to engage throughout the communities with like-minded individuals who may have an interest in engaging with Hurtigruten on community citizen science activities. And so this again was on a very sunny day in Wrangell, and leading the discussion there at the center of the picture was a Student Conservation Association intern. So on the left is a picture of me in 2002. I came to Alaska as a Student Conservation Association intern. On the right is a young woman who works for the U.S. Forest Service in Wrangell on regenerative tourism, citizen science, and there in the middle in the blue was a Hurtigruten employee that I was really working to introduce to prospective partners throughout the state. We got to go to all kinds of places that are near and dear to my heart. I was on the founding board for the Sitka Sound Science Center, and here we were at the Sitka Sound Science Center observing hatchery salmon returning to the Science Center's hatchery. We stopped in Seward and were able to visit the Alutiiq Pride Marine Institute, and we're very grateful for that tour. In this image on the left is a gentleman who's involved with regenerative tourism based out of British Columbia, really focused on Indigenous tourism and supporting Indigenous people in British Columbia, but also was very intrigued by opportunities in Alaska. To his right was a British social media whiz who was hired on by Hurtigruten to document a lot of our activities. And to the right is a Hurtigruten employee who had an interest in joining us. We're very grateful for that opportunity. We continued on, and I don't do any of this any justice, but what I'll say here is before us is a stretch just to the west of Unga Island on the Alaska Peninsula. And we came across something that was just extraordinary. We came across a group of over 125 humpback whales that were feeding on the surface. And so the ship was able to, turn off the engines, go to silent battery power. And we just quietly and slowly and carefully drifted through this feeding event. And all of the guests had been able to download Happy Whale to their phones. And so they were able to take thousands of images of whale flukes and actually broke Happy Whale's website with all of the uploads that were taking place. It was a really amazing experience, and it was a scientifically important event documenting whales that had traveled from places as far away as Japan. And that's just something that Hurtigruten could potentially bring to citizen science. We're able to visit with a really innovative seafood processor in Dutch Harbor. And so on the left is an Alaska Sea Grant employee who with me was visiting a collagen plant for the first time. And so this plant we visited was transforming byproducts of seafood processing, the skins, the bones, the viscera, into products such as fish collagen, fish oil, and fish meal. And it was just a really cool experience that I wanted to share here with you all. I was also able to cook kelp pickle soup for the crew. The staff that had visited Cordova loved it. And so this is inspired by our daughter Celia's love of pickles. And I'm just always looking for opportunities to put a plug in for her pickle soup. We traveled into the Bering Sea, and this is just an image from an extraordinary event. We visited the community of Savunga, and these are elders in the community playing music and dancing for the guests. And I would just say that I've lived in Alaska for 20 years, and many of our experiences were unlike anything I've ever seen and done in the state. And these guests were both incredibly fortunate, but really grateful for these opportunities. And then finally, my British friends and I, we ended our trip in Nome, and they were very happy to have an American beer. And certainly we were also very busy that day visiting sites of local significance. So just from my perspective, based on those experiences, this is nothing that will be new to Cordova. This is everything that we do. Kathy made reference to it. The guests on board Hurtigruten ship were really interested in cultural activities. And so Native Village of Eyak, their engagement last year, drum making, for example, is of great interest to these travelers. Prince William Sound Science Center, giving seabird tours and educational tours are of interest to these guests. But also I would say that Hurtigruten is very involved with marine debris collection throughout their destinations, which are global. And so I see that being an opportunity to maybe engage guests with local activities like marine debris cleanup, but also you could combine seabird mortality counts when you're traversing beaches. It's easy to kind of double up on those activities. Here in Cordova, Copper River Watershed Project and others are notable local partners in all of these spaces. And at University of Alaska Fairbanks, there's a new Blue MBA program that could conceivably provide internships to companies such as these. Also, as Kathy mentioned, local seafood producers, especially those maybe smaller producers. It's a really unique opportunity to have access to markets, whether it's the gift shop on board the ship or to make connections with the company for inclusion of their products in their meals. And then otherwise, for the city, there are many benefits, including head taxes. And then finally, the Hurtigruten Foundation is a nonprofit foundation that Hurtigruten operates that uses revenues from their activities to support entities and activities in Cordova, potentially to include many of these organizations listed here, including the Cordova Chamber of Commerce. So that's it. We've got about 12 minutes now for Peter, and I'll stop sharing here.
Thanks. Thank you, Tommy and Kathy. It's actually listening to both of you, it's got my mind buzzing of ways that we can bring all this together. So we saw, Kathy, you presenting on regenerative tourism in general and what it is, and that you've been connecting with others in like the state of Hawaii that's got a regenerative tourism practice. And then Tommy, you were talking about an individual in British Columbia. There was a British social media whiz scientist on board. And it makes me think about with the sort of next generation of these tourists is how to give them a connection and a recognition that they've gone through a regenerative tourism activity, and a way to be able to. There's a lot going on in what are called digital badges or electronic connections to events. So let's say you've got a business in Cordova that's part of this regenerative tourism in connections. They might have a badge on their door to say, hey, if you come in and do one of our events, you would get a regenerative tourism connection to your citizen science track or your climate offset track or your indigenous knowledge track. So wherever they are in the world, they could be in Indonesia, Europe, Canada, wherever it might be, and they partake in another climate offset event and they get a tick in their online system. And as a result, you'll have more businesses getting people coming in because they're coming into a workshop or a hands-on event that connects to that online digital badge. And once a tourist has got all of their activities, let's say 10 activities, they then get a digital recognition that they've got through citizen science regenerative tourism level 1, for example. So somebody like Hurtigruten organization could have on their bookings, hey, come on this cruise ship and cruise event and you'll reach your climate or your citizen science regenerative tourism digital badge as part of this 8-day cruise. And you could have businesses in Cordova that have the badge on their door. So if a tourist turns up and they're like, want to get involved, they're like, oh, if I go in here, I can get towards my regenerative tourism badge, for example. And then I was even thinking, Tommy, when you highlighted that the ship went on battery mode, that's actually a climate offset. So you could even say for that particular time, you're offsetting your climate impact from your flight. So therefore, you could weigh that up and say, oh, actually, I've done a negative climate footprint from my event. I've moved closer towards my climate offset badge. So I'm thinking of ways that as you build this out, so businesses that are part of this collaborative network can get the recognition, so they can have it on their front door when they say that they're a member of the Chamber of Commerce. Right next to that is they're a member of the Regenerative Tourism badge, and whether they're in Cordova, somewhere in British Columbia, Vancouver, wherever they are globally, somebody can walk in and say, oh, I'm going to get a tick towards my badge because of that. And you'll have tourists maybe even coming to Cordova because they want to get their Alaskan climate offset badge level 3, and there's a business particularly there, and so it's sort of like a competitive but recognition of the impact that individual businesses and those tourists are performing. So wherever they are in the world, they'll be able to move forwards with their regenerative tourism badge. So that's just a thought I had of how to connect all of this together. So no matter where they are, whether they're on a cruise ship or on a ship, or if they're on land, they're reaching towards something, and they can actually see that they've actually made a difference in addition to supporting that business. So it's just some thoughts I've had listening to you both about how we can use these technologies to bring everybody together and people gain recognition, both the tourists themselves, but the businesses themselves, so they can have a something that is either digital or physical representation of the work that they're doing, and they can say that they are part of the regenerative tourism process. So I definitely will be following up with you both on that. So.
Well, I hear the enthusiasm in your voice, and I share it. And likewise, I will be sharing this video with my contacts at Hurtigruten. So I think this just demonstrates the opportunity that exists in Cordova.
Yeah, I was going to say as well that I think that that's an interesting idea that you shared, Peter. Also, there could be a good benefit to businesses to be able to have tallies that are made and kept in the background, so that they can say, you know, over the last 24 months, you know, they can then say that they have provided this much carbon offset or whatever, or this much positive social impact, or this much cultural revitalization. Because as a not small entrepreneur, you know, it's really hard to keep track of that data yourself. But if there's some system in the background that's that you have access to see those tallies, that can have some benefit for you as a business owner as well. And in addition to the fact that it can be a motivator to get people through your door.
Exactly, and I'm thinking that if you've got individuals around the US or around the world that have connected to this digital regenerative tourism, let's say you want to, as a business, run some hands-on event, but you want to make sure that the individuals coming in have a little bit of experience about how to be part of that hands-on activities. And let's say they've gone through some other hands-on activities elsewhere, that digital connection allows the business owner to know, oh, that person coming in has got some previous experience in how to interact with a kelp farmer, because maybe they've gone through something as a workshop earlier on in another country, and as a result they come in and say, oh, they've got some experience and maybe they can help in the harvesting, they can help in a particular thing because they've already reached a level of experience. You don't have somebody coming in that's like, oh, I haven't done this before, and then the business is unsure about how they might interact with the individual. So you can have levels of experience for those tourists coming through, and they could get involved in more and more activities for the business, and the business can basically just go into this system and say, oh, that person's reached that level of experience, I'm happy for them to be part of my harvesting that particular day. And as a result, the business logs in with their system and they can see all the different events they've got, and it totals their offset or their indigenous knowledge transfer, wherever it might be, and it just allows them, as you say, to have something in the back end, providing them the data they need without too much time. And as you were highlighting in our discussion before we got going, is capacity. And therefore, you can use these platforms to increase the return on their capacity to put on these events.
Yeah, I was able to do some regenerative tourism tours in Hawaii when I was there recently, and also meet some regenerative tourism providers that are providing tours around the state. And one that I met that operates out of Maui, they do plant restoration work, and so removing non-native plants and trying to revitalize some native species that have been almost lost. And yeah, they actually rely a lot on volunteer labor to do that. But they've been using this platform, this Hawaii-based platform that we're planning to work with to recruit volunteers for that. And then also I went on a tour of a cacao farm. And it was really neat because there was also like a chocolate tasting as part of it. And so what these tours do is they provide this fun, engaging activity, but then also you learn about the revitalization work that this farm is also doing, how they're planting dozens of koa trees on their land to bring back this native species that has huge cultural significance within the culture there. And then you learn about the significance and also some of the kind of not so pretty history of Hawaii and plantations and stuff like that, and how that affected the local indigenous culture and plant life. But they also rely on volunteers a couple times a month to come in and help them harvest, and it is kind of skilled labor. So they never know whether those volunteers are going to know what they're doing or not. So that's an interesting aspect of it.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of if a tourist had gone through that and then they came into Cordova and they went through an equivalent one, then that's 2 events they've done, and then eventually if they reach, let's say 5, they get a badge to say you've reached track 1 of the sort of that particular area of it. And University of Alaska Fairbanks has something called micro credentials, which is the same sort of thing. And so that I think there's opportunities there to build this up, so tourists wherever they are actually get that connection, and therefore they're not only doing it for the greater good, but also they get something themselves back for that support, and as a result the businesses are connected to the tourists. So we're now 3 minutes to go for the hour, and I want to be respectful of attendees' times and our presenters' times, so I'm going to wrap up and talk a little bit more about what we've got coming for the rest of the Startup Week. So I want to highlight what's coming next. So we're in day 4 of Startup Week. We actually had a weekend events in Anchorage as part of a Startup Weekend, and Kathy was highlighting some events coming up in the Cordova region this weekend, and there's a social event on Saturday. So if you're interested in coming along and hanging out with innovators and local entrepreneurs, in addition to the summit that she mentioned, you can find out more about that on the Alaska Startup Week's website. There's information about the location, the time for that. So that's going to actually be on Saturday evening, 7:30 to 8:30. But we're part of a larger collection of events along with the event today in Regenerative Tourism. We've got events on intellectual property later today, based out of Fairbanks, events in Seward and Anchorage. We've got in-person events, online events, hybrid events. It's really just a celebration of entrepreneurship and innovation across the state, whether it be an open house or an informational and discussion event, as you've heard today. Numerous number of sponsors we have supporting this, along with groups like ourselves today putting on events, but also those providing financial support to be able to provide food at in-person events or facilities to be able to put on an event. So we are part of Alaska Startup Week. If you've got the QR code capability and want to know more about what's going on, you can take a picture of the little QR code here at the bottom. You've seen the logo throughout, AKSW22. You can find out more information on Facebook through our Center Ice Facebook. I know Cordova Chamber of Commerce has a Facebook account, and they've got some of the events linked through them. But I just want to remind everybody to say thank you to our presenters, Tommy Sheridan, Alaska Blue Economy Center, Kathy Renfeld, Cordova Chamber of Commerce, and myself, Peter Weberly, at Alaska Center Ice here, based in Fairbanks on the Trotieta campus, on the lower Tanana River, and the Dene people of the interior of Alaska, and Tommy recognized the Alaska Native lands upon which Tommy and Kathy reside. So on that note, I'd like to thank everybody for their time today. For anybody listening online that wants to share this with colleagues that weren't able to make it, it will be going on to the Center Ice YouTube channel, and I'm sure Tommy and Kathy will share it through their networks. But just want to say thank you to Tommy and Kathy for their time, everybody for listening, and I wish you all a good rest of the week, and hope to see you at some more Startup Week events as we wrap up the week and go into the weekend. So thank everybody for your time, and I wish you a good rest of the week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.